this is Miss G, your favorite math teacher. And today it's Cooking with Miss G, and chicken and dumplings is on the menu. This is what you'll need to make chicken and dumplings. Self-rising flour, milk, cream of chicken soup, 2 boxes of chicken broth, butter, and chicken. Now I have chicken breast strips today, but any kind of chicken will do. Sometimes I use a whole chicken, and sometimes I just cook up breast. It's just whatever I have in the freezer. First thing you always do before you cook is wash your hands. The first thing I want to do is cook my chicken. So you can cook your chicken a number of ways. A lot of times I put mine in my Instant Pot, but today I'm just going to cook it in the same pot that I'm going to cook my chicken and dumplings in, just to save time. So I'm going to cook mine in the chicken broth. So I'm just going to go ahead and pour this in my pot. I'm just going to add my chicken into my pot. Make sure you don't splash it everywhere. And I'm going to turn it on high. Okay, my chicken has boiled for a while, and I want you to come look at it. Come over here. When your chicken looks about like this, it's done. So I'm just going to take a piece and make sure. It pulled apart easily and it was white, so that means it is done. So I'm going to go ahead and take my chicken out and put it in this bowl to let it cool so I can shred it. Okay, while I'm shredding my chicken, I'm just going to turn it down on low so it'll keep simmering. And I'm going to go ahead and put my cream of chicken soup in. Just let it simmer while I'm working on everything else. This just kind of helps give it a little creaminess. Okay, so I got all my chicken in the bowl. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 2 forks and I'm just going to shred it real good. If you see any of those gristly places, go ahead and pull them out because nobody likes to get a mouthful of that. So I'm just going to shred it like this. And remember, if you see some little places that aren't quite done, that's okay because it's going back in the pot in just a few minutes when we get our dumplings made. Okay, I think I've got that shredded pretty well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour it back into my pot. Remember, I put it on simmer and I put my cream of chicken soup in. So I'm just going to pour my shredded chicken back out. And I got as much gristle as I could see out, but if I may have missed some of it, and that's okay. We'll just pick it out when we eat it. So I'm going to put my chicken back in. And I should probably point out that when I cook, remember, I'm cooking for 2 growing boys. So I usually cook for probably 6 to 8 people. Even though there's only 4 of us, my boys eat a lot of food. So anything I cook is probably for 6 to 8 people. So you adjust it for your family. Okay. I'm going to turn my heat back up to get it boiling again while I work on my dough. Okay, so I'm going to measure my flour. I'm going to use 2 cups of flour because I'm making a big batch, but for a family of 4 or less, you probably only want 1 cup of flour. So this is a dry measuring cup, and when you use a dry measuring cup, you always kind of spoon it in. And I do it over my bowl because a little bit extra is not going to hurt anything. So I always do it over my bowl, but you spoon it in because you don't want it to be packed in. You want it to be nice and fluffy. And then you take a straight edge and do it like that to make sure that you have a cup. So this is a cup of flour. And save this flour in this bowl because you're going to need it for the counter in a minute. Okay, so I've got my flour in there, and now I'm going to put a half a cup of milk. Actually, it's a half a cup if you only use 1 cup, so I'm going to double that. This is a liquid measuring cup, so you always want to put it on a flat surface, and you want to get eye level with it to make sure you have a cup. So we're going to do a cup because for 1 cup of flour you need half a cup of milk, and I used 2 cups of flour, so I'm going to use a whole cup of milk. Now also, this is called a pastry blender, but you can also use a fork to do this. So I use self-rising flour, so I don't need to add any extra salt or baking powder or anything, but I do need to add butter. So about 1 inch is a tablespoon of butter. I use 2 cups, so I'm going to use about 2 inches of butter. And this is cold butter. It hasn't been sitting out very long. And I'm just going to go ahead and cube it just to make it easier to blend. Okay. Now you're going to take your pastry blender, or if you don't have a pastry blender, you can use a fork, and you just kind of work it in there until it gets good and crumbly. So I've been blending this together for a little while, and see how it looks crumbly? It's kind of got little pieces of butter in it, so it's good, and I think it's blended pretty well. Has that crumbly look. I see a big wad of butter right there, so I'm going to mix it a little bit with my fingers. Okay, so now I'm going to take my milk, and I don't like to pour my milk in all at the same time. I like to pour it in a little bit at a time. That way, if I've got too much, I can kind of adjust. You can always, if you think it's too soupy, you can always add more flour, or if you think it's not doughy enough, you can always add more milk. So just put it in a little bit at a time until it forms a bowl, a ball of dough, all in one piece. Okay, I think it is going to take all the milk. And really, truth be told, I'm not usually a measurer. I usually just put it in and until I know what the consistency is. Okay, that's too much. So I'll just add some more flour. I'll use this that came off. I'll add a little more flour. It's getting there. Needs a little more flour. Yeah, it's getting better consistency now. See, you make a mistake, you just fix it. I'm going to put one more in there, and I think we'll be good. Yep, we're going to be good with that. Okay, so I just cleaned my counter really well. I made sure that I got it nice and clean with some soap and water, and I also made sure that I rinsed it really well. So I got everything off, and I've dried it really well. So now I'm going to take some flour, spread it on my counter. This is where your dough is going to go. Yes, you get to play in dough. I like to do it too. It's fun. And then I'm going to put, except it gets a little messy sometimes. You might want to save your mopping until after you get finished. I'm going to put my dough in the middle. Let's see how it's good and sticky. Uh-oh, I just got flour all over my shirt. I'm going to sprinkle the top of my dough with flour. The more flour on your dough, the better, because it thickens your soupy part of your dumplings. So see how that's good and malleable, fun to play with. Okay, I'm going to get my rolling pin. Alright, so I've got my rolling pin, and I'm just going to kind of coat it in flour, and I'm just going to roll my dough out about pretty thin. And it's okay if it's not beautiful and perfect. Actually, I'm going to take some of this dough to the side because I forgot I was doing a double recipe. And I'll do it in a minute. Okay, so I'm just going to roll it out. You want to get it pretty thin. I need some more flour on top. It keeps sticking. Because you're going to be cutting it up and it'll swell once it gets in the stuff over here. So I like to use a pizza dough cutter. I'm going to sprinkle some more on top because remember that extra flour helps thicken our stuff. And I'm just going to cut it. Doesn't matter if it's perfect. It's all going to taste really good. Okay, so I want you to see that I am boiling over here. I'm at a rolling boil. So I'm just going to drop my dumplings in. And they'll sink, but once they get cooked, they'll start floating to the top. Are you getting over the pot? No. Get the pot. See how they float up? Some people make their dumplings in balls and they just drop balls or spoonfuls in. And I've done it that way too. My mom always made chicken and dumplings with balls. So I do that sometimes, and my grandmother, she always made it like this. So I alternate. But you get to play in the dough if you do it like this. So. And one thing my granny always says is you don't stir, you push. You always push your dumplings. I don't know if anybody else's grandmother does it like that, but that's what when I learned how to make dumplings with my granny, that's what she always said. Push, push, push. I'm going to turn my heat down to medium. It'll keep it boiling. Okay, I'm going to roll out the rest of my dough. And then we'll get it in. No. Okay, so I've got my second batch rolled out and I've put them in, and I'm going to push those around. You can see my soupiness is getting a little less soupy. And I'm pushing my dumplings, not stirring my dumplings. Now, I'm just going to put my lid on, turn the heat off, and let it soak and get pretty thick. And I got to wipe up all this flour. I've got a big mess today. Okay, so this is our finished product. It's been probably about 45 minutes. The longer you let them sit, the thicker they'll get. They're pretty thick. Still a little soupy, so I'd probably have to serve this in a bowl for now, but tomorrow they'll be thick enough you could put them on a plate. You can serve them by themselves, or you can serve them with whatever else you want to cook. I like to serve mine with pinto beans and fried okra. So that's what's for supper tonight. Bye-bye.